They say Las Vegas is where dreams are spun from desert sands. Yet at times, it's also where massive fortunes evaporate into thin air, consumed by the sheer arrogance of those in power. Just look at the Palms Casino Resort today, a shimmering emblem under the Nevada sun. Polished, perfected, adorned with priceless contemporary art. Quite the spectacle, wouldn't you agree? But step inside and listen closely, you'll hear a chilling silence. No boisterous laughter. No vibrant pulse of life. Just an echoing void, where once stood the second home for countless loyal patrons. This emptiness isn't a coincidence. It's the scene of one of the most egregious financial disasters in modern Las Vegas history. And the numbers, they simply don't lie. Station casinos, in their blind ambition, shelled out $312 million to acquire this landmark. Not content, they then pour another $620 million into a lavish overhaul that no one asked for. Nearly $1 billion was sunk into these foundations, all to transform it into an exclusive playground for the ultra-rich. And what was the outcome? Just 5 short years later, they unceremoniously dumped it for a mere $650 million. Hundreds of millions of dollars simply vanished within a single management tenure. This wasn't bad luck, nor was it a market downturn. This is a direct consequence of abysmal financial management, of a cavalier attitude towards spending, and above all, the destructive delusion that money alone can buy prestige or the loyalty of its customers. Today, we're going to dissect this opulent corpse. To understand why a once vibrant party paradise slowly bled out, right on its own pile of gold. To truly understand the magnitude of this financial disaster, we have to wind the clock back to the early 2000s. Back before Las Vegas was completely overrun by corporate spreadsheets and soulless algorithms. This was the era of the Maloof family. And let's be honest, George Maloof didn't try to build a fake Versailles on Flamingo Road. He was a merchant who understood the golden rule of the desert. Know your customer. When the Palms Casino Resort opened its doors in 2001, it wasn't trying to sell you a hollow dream of unattainable luxury. It was selling fun. It was loud, it was chaotic, but it possessed something the current version desperately lacks: identity. Maloof pulled off a strategic masterstroke that today's corporate boards seem unable to replicate. On one hand, he partnered with MTV, turning the hotel into the set of the real world and making it a magnet for NBA stars and Hollywood royalty. It was a genius marketing play that cost very little but generated massive hype. But here's the secret sauce that the new owners ignored. While chasing the limelight, Maloof never turned his back on the Las Vegas locals. He understood a simple economic truth. When the cameras turn off and the celebrities fly home, it's the local electrician, the school teacher, and the off-duty dealer who keep the lights on during a slow Tuesday night. He gave them free parking. He offered the famous $6 movie tickets at the Brendan Theaters. He provided quality food that didn't require a mortgage to enjoy, and most importantly, he offered fair gambling odds on the slot machines. The Palms back then was like a bad boy with a good heart. It was fancy enough to make you feel special, but grounded enough not to insult your intelligence or your wallet. The result? The place was printing money, not because of abstract art on the walls, but because of a basic respect for the working man's dollar. It was a massive financial success because it didn't try to be the Wynn or the Bellagio. It was content being the Palms. It knew exactly what it was. It was a business built on reality, not delusion. But as we know, in the casino business, nothing attracts destruction quite like a pile of gold waiting to be improved by someone who thinks they know better. If you prefer raw truth over the neon glow, hit subscribe to support the channel. It gives us the fuel to go all in on the stories others are afraid to tell. Now, let's see what really went down. In 2016, the Palms changed hands. Station Casinos, led by Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, purchased a property for $312 million. On paper, it seemed like a solid, if expensive, acquisition. But what happened next wasn't business. It was an ego trip of monumental proportions. The Fertitta brothers made a fundamental miscalculation that any veteran Vegas cab driver could have warned them about. Geography is destiny. The Palm sits on Flamingo Road, a mile west of the Las Vegas Strip. It is off-strip. But the new owners didn't want to accept that reality. They were possessed by a delusion that they could force this off-strip property to compete toe-to-toe with the Cosmopolitan or the Wynn. They didn't just renovate the hotel. They declared war on its identity. They authorized a staggering $620 million renovation. Let that number sink in. That is more than double what they paid to buy the place. They decided that what the working-class locals and fun-seeking tourists really needed wasn't better odds or cheaper drinks, but a decapitated shark preserved in formaldehyde by artist Damien Hirst. They installed a 60-foot headless demon statue in the pool area, rumored to cost $14 million. They built sky villas, costing up to $40,000 a night. It was a museum for the 1%, built in a neighborhood for the 99%. And in doing so, they committed the cardinal sin of the service industry. They fired their customers. The loyal locals, the people who kept the lights on for 15 years, walked into the new Palms and felt like strangers in their own home. They saw the pretension, they saw the price hikes, and they turned right around and drove back to the suburbs. But the crown jewel of this financial mismanagement was a nightclub called KOS. If the art collection was a waste, KOS was an incinerator for cash. In a desperate bid to buy relevance, they signed DJ Marshmello to a residency deal reportedly worth $60 million, paying him roughly $600,000 for every single weekend performance. It was an obscene amount of money, based on the assumption that rich kids would leave the heart of the strip to party next to the freeway. They didn't. The math never worked. The overhead was suffocating. Just 7 months after its grand opening, 7 months, KOS shut its doors. They had to buy out Marshmello's contract, essentially paying him millions of dollars not to play. It stands today as perhaps the single most embarrassing failure in nightlife history. It wasn't just bad luck. It was the inevitable result of corporate leaders who were so blinded by their own ambition that they forgot how to count. When the world shut down in March 2020 due to the global pandemic, Las Vegas turned into a ghost town overnight. For most casinos, this was a tragedy. For station casinos in the Palms, it was practically a mercy killing. The narrative often peddled by corporate PR is that COVID-19 destroyed their business model. Don't believe it. The virus was just a final straw. The patient had been bleeding out for years. By the time the locks were put on the doors, the Palms was already financially dead. The Cow's nightclub disaster had already punched a hole in their balance sheet that no amount of stimulus money could fix. When the rest of Vegas began to reopen in June 2020, when the lights flickered back on at the Bellagio, the Caesars, and even the downtown dives, the Palms remained dark, month after month. It sat there in the desert sun, a billion-dollar paperweight. Station casinos didn't rush to reopen it because, quite frankly, they were losing less money with the doors closed and with them open. It was a humiliating admission of defeat. They kept it shuttered for nearly 2 years, longer than almost any other major property in the city. Finally, the white flag was waved. In 2021, they announced the sale of property to the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians for $650 million. Now, do the math with me. They bought it for $312 million. They poured in $620 million in renovations. That's nearly $1 billion invested. Selling it for $650 million isn't just a loss. It is a financial bloodbath. It is the kind of wealth destruction that gets people fired in any other industry. Yet in the casino world, they just shuffle the deck and move on. The San Manuel tribe made history, becoming the first Native American tribe to own and operate a casino resort in Las Vegas. They dusted off the Damien Hirst shark. They turned the lights back on and they welcomed guests back. But the question remains, can you buy a soul? Walk through the Palms today. It is cleaner than it's ever been. The marble is polished. The staff is polite. It is a magnificent, glimmering structure. But to those of us who remember the sweat, the noise, and the chaotic energy of the early 2000s, it feels sterile. It stands as a magnificent zombie, a beautiful corpse of a building animated by money, but devoid of the spirit that once made it alive. It is the ultimate cautionary tale of modern Las Vegas. You can renovate the lobby, you can buy the art, and you can hike the prices, but you cannot manufacture a vibe on a spreadsheet. In 2021, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians made history. They became the first Native American tribe to own and operate a casino resort in the heart of Las Vegas. For the first time in a decade, There was a glimmer of competence in the executive suite. Unlike the Fertitta brothers, the San Manuel tribe didn't come in with a wrecking ball. They came with humility. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel. They just tried to fix the flat tire. They brought back something the previous owners had scorned: hospitality. They reopened the famous lowered the table minimums. On the surface, they are doing everything right. But in business, sometimes doing the right thing isn't enough when you're fighting ghosts. The problem isn't the new management. It's a legacy of arrogance left behind. For 5 years, the Palms told the average customer, "You are not rich enough to be here." That message doesn't just vanish because you change the logo on the napkins. Drive past Palms on a Tuesday night. The parking lot tells a real story. It's better than the dark days of 2020. But it's nowhere near the glory days of 2005. The locals, the lifeblood of any off-strip casino, have found new homes. They've moved on to the South Point, the Red Rock, or downtown. Winning them back is harder than building a new casino from scratch. And then there's the building itself. The $620 million renovation created a luxury trap. The marble floors and the Damien Hirst art still scream expensive. It creates a psychological barrier. Middle-class tourists walk in, look around the excessive opulence, and instinctively clutch their wallets tighter, assuming a beer will cost $20. The vibe is still confusing. Is it a tribal casino for the people? Or is it still a museum for the absent billionaires? The San Manuel tribe is fighting a war on two fronts, battling the ruthless competition of the Las Vegas Strip and battling the toxic reputation of the past. They are trying to breathe life into a mausoleum. Will they succeed? It's too early to call. But as we look at the empty chairs in the high-limit lounge, one thing is painfully clear. You can buy the building, you can buy the art, but trust? Trust is the one thing in Las Vegas that is not for sale. In the end, the story of the Palms isn't really about a hotel. It's a parable about modern America. It teaches us a lesson that corporate boardrooms seem determined to ignore. Money cannot buy a soul. You can spend $690 million. You can hire the world's most expensive DJs. You can hang sharks in formaldehyde above a bar, but you cannot write a check for cool. You cannot manufacture loyalty on a spreadsheet. The Maloof brothers understood something that Station Casino forgot. Las Vegas wasn't built on marble floors and $40,000 suites. It was built on a handshake. It was built on the feeling that, for a few nights, you were someone special, whether you were a whale or a working-class guy from Ohio playing the nickel slots. When they chased away the locals to court the billionaires, they didn't just lose their customers. They lost their identity. They hollowed out the building until it was just a beautiful, empty shell. The Palm stands today as a monument, not to luxury, but to 34 corporate hubris. It is a billion-dollar tombstone marking the spot where greed tried to murder culture and lost. For those of us who remember the old Vegas, the lesson is bittersweet. We can't go back. The golden era of cheap buffets and fair odds is likely gone forever, buried under resort fees and paid parking. But looking at the empty dance floor KOS, there's a small, quiet satisfaction in knowing one thing. Sometimes, the little guy wins by simply walking away. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, if you missed the Vegas it used to be, share this video. Let's remind them that we are still here, and we are still watching.